Alright folks, welcome back to Dominions 5 Strategy. Once again we're taking a look at a nation, and we're kind of continuing on from last time. We're taking a look at Middle Age Relay, the Fallen Star. So if you recall, Early Age Relay was the Aboleths, where you have these astral, mind-enslaving fish people, and the biggest problem of Early Age Relay was that it's very hard to get the powerful mages above ground. You can get these slave mages above ground. And most of their troops can go above ground, but their mind-blasting units and their powerful mind lords and aboleths cannot go above ground. And so that's kind of Early Age Relay's real big crippling weakness. Well, Middle Age Relay is a little bit different and better, a lot more powerful, primarily because they don't suffer from that weakness. So let's go through it. Commander-wise, we've got scouts, very standard amphibious scouts. We have the Traitor Princes, who are, I believe, exactly the same as Early Age Relay's Traitor Princes. Possibly higher protection? Let's take a look just to double check. Nope, they are exactly the same unit, except not slaves. So if we look at, we go back to Middle Age Relay here. Yeah, you can see these are not slaves and they don't have Taskmaster anymore. So that's the only difference. We have the Illithid Lords. So the Illithids are the leading species of Relay. And so Illithid Lords are amphibious and blunt resistant. Those are characteristics that all Illithids share. They're also magic beings, spirit sight. They have void sanity, which is a useful trait, and we'll talk about why. Illithid Lords have Taskmaster +2, only 40 leadership, but they also have 40 magic leadership, so they can also lead magic beings. So Illithid Lords can very easily lead slave units, some of which count as magical. We've got slave priests and we've got slave mages. They are, once again, the same as Early Age Relay. We have Star Children. Star Children are special units, which, special commanders. They are assassins. They have Assassin 2, so they have a decent chance of avoiding bodyguards, and they have this Mind Blast attack. And so the Mind Blast attack does armor-negating psychic damage, and it also paralyzes. So it's a magic resistance check, which most mages can pass, but can be effective. Star Children are not very expensive, so especially if you have a lot of normal non-mage commanders leading armies, using some mind-blasting Star Children assassins with a little bit of gear, like a bottle of living water or something, can be highly effective, and that's one of Middle Age Relay's very annoying strategies. Then you have the 2-star spawn. One can be recruited anywhere, and one can be recruited only in the capital. The one that can be recruited anywhere is, honestly, a bit of a shit mage. 200 gold for 2 paths. That is expensive. Level 2 priest, which is nice, but still, good paths and astral, so you can communion them, but 200 gold for 2 paths is just a hard sell. They do have this summoning skill ability, as well as, of course, the spirit sight and the void sanity. The capital only star spawn, on the other hand, is actually a fantastic mage. They are slow to recruit, but they're 290 gold for 6 paths, which is very, very reasonable, especially because their paths are really good. They've got 1 water, 3 astral, so they are inherently very powerful astral mages. They can be up to astral 5. Astral 5 is extremely potent. They can also get death or earth, which are great cross paths, and they can get more water if you want more water. So Relay can form communions, albeit kind of expensive ones, and they have a lot of oomph out of their capital-only star spawn. They're also the last one. They have the Hybrid Commander, which can only be recruited in coastal forts, and can mind blast, I guess. I don't know. I don't see them being super especially useful, except in that they're cheaper than Illithid Lords and have slightly higher standard leadership, so there's that. But the main mage recruit is still going to be the Slave Mage, because the Slave Mage gives you 4 paths, pretty decent paths for a reasonable cost, very reasonable actually. And the Star Spawn, you'll recruit these Star Spawn in your capital because they are quite potent mages and you'll want them, and they are amphibious. So you can take these guys out of the water without having to deal with all the struggles and circumlocutions and forging items and casting special national rituals and yada 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 that Early Age Relay had to deal with. The Star Spawn can just leave the water for no reason, so they'll be fine. They are not priests, so they don't have the priestly authority of these Star Spawn, but frankly, you shouldn't really care. Unit-wise, all of these units are exactly the same. These are the same units as from Early Age Relay. They've got the Slave Guardian Tritons, they've got the Atlanteans. Over here, they've got the Mermen with the nets, all that kind of stuff. This unit is different. The Meteorite Guard has protection 19. So they're very, very solid. And yeah, this unit is not present in Early Age Relay. Early Age Relay does not have access to the Meteorite Guards, so they don't have that heavy infantry option, which is another point in favor of Middle Age Relay. The Meteorite Guards are actually extremely potent units. Their defense skill is low, but they have very high protection, reasonable gold cost, a lot of resources, but reasonable gold cost, high magic resistance, especially for a slave unit, high morale for a slave unit, and they hit very hard with a magical weapon. So Meteorite Guards are extremely solid. You also have the Shambler Thralls, which are exactly the same, including being magical. Them and the Lobo Guards, remember, are magic units. And then you have the Crab Hybrid, which is kind of a weird unit. Decent protection, high hit points, high strength, otherwise garbage stats, no resource cost. So, also, not amphibious, purely aquatic. So frankly, I've done some testing with them. They're okay. They're tough is the main thing about them. They can tank really, really well. Protection 14 and 25 hit points means they can suck up quite a bit of damage. That said, they can't necessarily suck up more damage than like 6 Lobo Guard or a couple of Meteorite Guards. So I would just stick with the Meteorite Guards for tanking, to be honest. 19 protection is better from my perspective. I don't think Crab Hybrids have a great place. I don't use them all that much. Then you have Illithids and Illithid Soldiers. These are your Mind Blasters. They function exactly like the Gibodai did for Early Age Relay. They cost the same 50 gold. You buy them to Mind Blast, and you just Mind Blast with them. You can, if you want, get Illithid Soldiers, which gives them a Magic Meteorite Trident and 17 protection. It kicks the resource cost up through the roof, and that's the only change. It makes them cost 50 extra resources. And it gives them one extra point of magic resistance as well. So, if that's worth it, that's kind of a call to make depending on how many resources you have available. You can certainly combo Illithid Soldiers with tons and tons of Lobo Guard and make that work, or Shambler Thralls, since they require pretty much no resources. You can use Crab Hybrids in this role if you want tougher chaff. But generally speaking, I would say just stick with the regular Illithids. They're not sacred, or even cap only, so they're not particularly recruitment limited, and I would just use them as Mind Blasters. Like, you don't need them to be half-assed melee troops as well as Mind Blasters. And then you have these guys, the Hybrids. These are your on-land mass troop, except they're actually really hard to mass. 24 recruitment points. And they do have some resource cost for the ones that are worth something. Their stats are not terrible, and they have a secondary tentacle attack, which is AP. So 7 armor-piercing attack, that's not bad at all. And they have Spirit Sight, so you don't have to be afraid of darkness or anything with them. So, stat-wise, they're not terrible. They just cost more than double the recruitment points of a standard human, so you can't mass them as fast as you would like. Otherwise, I would absolutely be massing these guys from Coastal Forts, and in fact, you probably still should. Just because they're okay. Stat-wise, they're very, very similar to human light infantry, except they have a few more hit points, they have Spirit Sight, and they have that second tentacle armor-piercing attack. And that can actually be fairly useful. So, yeah, it's weird that their recruitment point's 24. I find that very strange. And there's no justification that I can really think of for it. So, in any case, those are the units in the mages. In terms of sights, they get Astral and Water from the Sunken City, and then Relay has access to the Void Gate. You can enter the Void Gate to summon Void monsters, which is a really interesting ability, albeit not honestly terribly useful in most circumstances. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Your main mage recruitment, as I said, is still going to be slave mages. Slave mages, star spawn from your capital, the capital only version. Sometimes star children. Star children being able to be quite competent assassins is definitely a strength of Middle Age Relay. Not a lot of factions have reliable access to competent assassins, and so having that ability is definitely a significant bonus and something worth taking note of, especially because you also have a lot of water access, and so you can very easily forge bottles of living water to give to your star children, which means your star children roll up into the assassination with a full-size water elemental, and then they mind blast to paralyze the guy on the other side, and then the water elemental flows over and punches them to death. It's they're still outdone by swarm assassins, but beyond that, they're pretty solid. They're up there. Troop-wise, your troop recruitment hasn't changed much, except that Meteorite Guard are actually pretty good. Once again, very high resource cost, but decent magic resistance, high prot, and good stats. They are really slow, but who really cares? And amphibious means that Meteorite Guard can do almost everything you want line infantry to do, including kill giants. They hit very, very hard enough to kill giants effectively. So enough Meteorite Guard, especially combined with Mind Blasters, can be extremely effective because, of course, paralyzed people don't defend themselves, and so they just start taking this 22 piercing magic damage straight to the face. Piercing, of course, means that they will reduce protection. So Meteorite Guard can, even to an extent, fight Ulm's infantry. They still lose on a resource basis because Ulm's infantry is disgustingly cheap, Middle Age Ulm that is, but they can put up something of a fight, especially because Ulm's infantry has really low magic resistance, and so the Mind Blast ruins them. Spammed Mind Blast from a whole bunch of Illithids makes Ulmish armies very sad. At least until they roll out with Iron Blizzard, at which point everything on the other side of the field becomes sad, but that's a different discussion. Magic-wise, you've got Astral primarily, and then Water, Earth, and Death. You've got plenty of water from your slave mages. Earth and Death comes only from randoms as well as nature. So you've got the randoms on this guy, and then you've got the randoms on these guys. Having potential access to Death 2 is really, really valuable, actually. It's about 5% or 6% of your star spawn will be Death 2. About another 5 or 6% will be Astral 5, and then Earth 2 and Water 3. Generally speaking, the Death and Earth is going to be the most valuable because that is how you break into your other paths. Middle Age Relay already has access to all the paths that people would be summoning Spectral Mages for, so you don't even need to worry about that. And having Death on your star spawn means you can very easily form up small communions, and in the mid to late game you can drop spells like Darkness. Darkness doesn't hurt you because pretty much all of your units have Spirit Sight, like all the ones you care about. Meteorite Guards have 100% Dark Vision. Not these guys. The Shambler Thralls have Dark Vision 50. Your Illithids have Spirit Sight. Your Hybrids have Spirit Sight. So basically all of your units that are going to be fighting are completely unaffected by darkness, which is not true of most of your enemies, with the exception of the undead factions, Ermor, Celeria, Nazca. They also are primarily unaffected by darkness, but against a lot of factions, if you drop darkness on a big army of Meteorite Guards, like, that's it. That's pretty much it. The other side is now taking, -6 to everything, and your Meteorite Guard's just going to cut them to shreds. The other special mechanic of Relay is entering the Void Gate to summon Void monsters. It's risky. The relevant factor is this skill that these star spawn have, the summoning skill. Every point of summoning skill you have increases your chance to successfully summon a monster that you can control from the Void Gate. Actually, technically, I think it only increases your chances of successfully summoning. I'm not sure what it does to control. But basically, there's two things the game tracks when it comes to summoning void monsters. One is whether you have summoning skill and what the point is, and the other is what the point value is. And the other is whether you're Relay. If you're not Relay and you for some reason have the Void Gate, you can send Astral Mages into it, it's just that 90% of the time they're going to die. If you're Relay, your percentage chance of success is much, much higher. Relay can actually make use of the Void Gate, can summon creatures from it and bind them, and some of them can be useful. Some of them are Mind Blasters, some of them are Life Drainers, some of them have... None of them are super powerful, at least none of the ones that I've gotten, except occasionally you get a unit called a Vastness, And vastnesses are pretty scary. In fact, let's take a look at them real quick. Okay, so this is the vastness, and this is honestly the reason why most people who are playing Middle Age Relay spend time sending people into the Void Gate. These guys do not show up often. The chance of them being captured is very, very low. But when they do show up, it's hilarious. They have these Steel Strength attacks, which are armor negating and inflict weakness. They have 4 Mind Blasts per turn, which is pretty crazy. They have tons of hit points, very high magic resistance, excellent stats across the board, infinite morale, they resist most things, and they have damage reversal. Plus, they're innate spellcasters. And in their, as commanders at least, they are Astral 3. So, vastnesses are terrifying, frankly. Damage reversal +2 in particular, basically this means they have the Blood Vengeance Bless on at all times except better, because Blood Vengeance merely inflicts the damage that you've taken on somebody else as well. Damage reversal actually means you take no damage if the enemy fails. I believe it's a magic resistance check against, with +2, I believe it's against 14. Somebody can correct me on that in the comments if I'm wrong, but I think it's 12 plus this value, or 10 plus this value, one of the two. In any case, if they fail a magic resistance check, you take no damage, and they take the damage instead. Also, he has a funny little attack animation. Ooh. Anyway, vastnesses are really good. Pretty much everything else that comes out of the Void Gate is largely ignorable. Like, there's the otherness. The othernesses, which are just bags of HP. The greater otherness is pretty solid because it's a very, very large bag of HP. But beyond that, they're just not impressive. There's the... I think there's the old one. There's a variety of them. I've gone through them all. I've tried them out in test games. To be honest, none of them are terribly impressive except for the vastness and the greater othernesses. And both of those are quite rare. So you can't really count on the Void Gate giving you anything good. But on the other hand, as Relay, you have quite cheap mages. Or, well, they're not cheap. You have fairly disposable mages who can go in there with summoning skill 3 and have a better chance at getting something at least decent. So there's that. So, how does Relay play? Well, obviously you start underwater, and your first goal is to take over the water. Your competition is kind of stiff, is your biggest problem. In the Middle Age, the underwater nations, some of them are really good at fighting underwater. Middle Age Pelagia, for example, has just straight up recruitable water 4 mages, the Triton Kings. So, it's a little bit rough. We can look at these guys. Yeah, see, the Triton Kings here, 400 gold, 4 water, plus 2 randoms. And then, of course, they also have the Mermages, which are water mages, and they have the Pearl Mages, which are water and astral mages with a random. So, like, Pelagia is really, really good at fighting underwater. Otherwise, you have Middle Age Agartha, which can march statues underwater. You have, well, Xibalba doesn't matter. But, so there's a lot of competition for the water is what I'm getting at. If Relay is lucky enough to start next to Is or something, they can roll them. If they're lucky enough to start far away from Pelagia, or ideally in another lake, then they're fine. But what Relay really wants to do, of course, is get out of the water. And fortunately, that's a lot easier for them than it was for the early age counterpart. Middle Age Relay can get out of the water with everybody, and it could do so pretty much trivially. Once they get set up on land, it becomes a little more complex, but at that point you can recruit your hybrids, and if you're lucky enough to get a lot of recruitment points, you can pump out a lot of hybrids pretty quickly. Hybrids do quite well when they are supported and buffed. Like the hybrid troopers here, they're not terrible. They're worth the cost, especially with that extra armor-piercing attack. The issue is just the recruitment points, and layering buffs on them. Now, you do get earth buffs as Middle Age Relay, albeit unreliably. You don't get any air buffs, which can be a bit of a bummer. But it's entirely possible to form a Slave Mage Communion that can drop Mass Regeneration, Marble Warriors, eventually Army of Lead, the mass Luck buff, Will of the Fates. So late game, you can get a whole bunch of buffs going. Also, Middle Age Relay can mind hunt very easily. So as Middle Age Relay, you have assassins, you have mind hunters, you have a lot of options for shutting down enemy armies, killing enemy thugs, killing enemy commanders to strand troops, all those shenanigans. And then you have the option of armies of Meteorite Guard, which are extremely tough, Hybrid Troopers, which do a surprising amount of damage for their cost, or Lobo Guard and Shambler Thralls, which are extremely cheap and meaty. And so you can just have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of units of ablative meat making up your front line. And the enemy basically has to carve through to your mages, while those mages are communing up and casting Power of the Spheres and buffing themselves up to cast Master and Slave, or similar, very high level, very dangerous, damaging spells. For example, as the Starspawn, Starspawn have high hit points, so if you have Earth Random Starspawn, you can very easily cast, say, Iron Skin or something, and then Earthquake with them, on top of from in front of a big communion, especially because they have blunt resistance. There's all kinds of nasty tricks you can pull with Starspawn and Slave Mages, especially because when you have this huge quantity of ablative meat to shove in front of them. So, Middle Age Relay is, I'm going to say, definitely the strongest of the three Relays factions. It's also the least toxic in a lot of ways. Early Age Relay tends to be toxic because Early Age Relay tends to be stuck underwater, where they can't win the game, and so they just start trying to make other people lose the game, which is very much frustrating and annoying for everybody involved. Late Age Relay is toxic because it is a pop kill dominion that makes everyone go crazy even if it doesn't kill them. And so everyone hates it and wants it to die, but since it's underwater, it's actually really hard to attack. Although in the late age, a lot of the land nations can go underwater, so it's a little bit easier than it would have been otherwise. But in any case, it's poison for the game, in the way that most pop kill nations are. Middle Age Relay doesn't have those issues. Middle Age Relay is not pop kill, it's not stuck underwater because it's amphibious. It does have a highly annoying positional advantage in that it starts underwater, and so most of the land nations can't effectively fight it. But, I mean, this is the era with Ermor, and Ermor and Asphodel, and Nazca, and Middle Age Pangea. So, compared to all the cancer that's already in the Middle Age, Relay is not that bad. Relay is it's not the best nation, but it's pretty solid. It can do some things. It can defend itself, it can attack aggressively, it can be relevant to the game, largely because of all the amphibiousness that it has, and because it has the Meteorite Guards, and the Hybrids, and the Illithid Mind Blasters who are amphibious, and thus and such. The Void Spawn, in my opinion, the Void Spawn are mostly a gimmick. The Void Monsters, like I said, the vast majority of them are not super impressive. There are a few that are super impressive, but then, of course, it takes, you have to commanderize them and get them set up. Once you do, they're sort of terrifying, but it's very much a crapshoot whether you'll ever get any of those, as opposed to just hordes and hordes of bad random events trying to assassinate your Starspawn, which will happen, by the way, even if you're Relay. If you start sending Starspawn into the Void Gate, many of them will die, or be lost in the void forever and just not show up until maybe a couple of years later. And many of them will go insane. But if you get a couple of the vastnesses, can be worth it. Up to you. Myself, I wouldn't mess with it too much, to be honest. So yeah, that's Relay's play. Lots of powerful astral mages. You're leaning heavily on your randoms in communions. Your communions are not cheap, but they are pretty effective. So you just grit your teeth and recruit slave mages. Backing up, primarily I would say Meteorite Guards are your most impressive recruitable unit. They're what I would try to lean on whenever you can. If you don't have the resources, of course, you have very low resource options. You have the Lobo Guard, you have the Shambler Thralls, you have the Mind Blasters, of course, which require pretty much no resources. Once you get above ground, you have the Hybrids, which are good meat shields and do a surprising amount of damage because they're double attacks. In terms of gods, most of these we've talked about because most of them are exactly the same as Early Age Relay, so let's just talk about the different ones. You have the Firstborn of the Star, who is a high summoning skill Astral 2 Rainbow Chassis. First of all, let's address the summoning skill 5. I wouldn't. do not send your pretender god into the void gate. Please, I'm begging you, don't do it. It won't be worth it. It won't work out, man. It won't work out the way you're thinking. Don't do it. Don't do it. Please, I'm begging you, don't do it. You also have the Utter Vast, which is the bigger version of the Vastness. And the Utter Vast is terrifying. So it has damage reversal. It's ethereal. It has all the resistances. It has Spirit Sight. It's an innate spellcaster. It teleports and blinks. So, in other words, you cannot escape the Utter Vast. You cannot evade the Utter Vast. You sure as hell can't fight the Utter Vast. It is monstrously powerful. As a result, it's not allowed for you to take it awake. You literally cannot take the Utter Vast awake, no matter what you want. It has to be either dormant or imprisoned. And this was actually, I think this is the only Pretender God chassis for which this is true. That's an anti-rush measure, because of course it can teleport, and it's amphibious. So, in the beta, apparently, what people were doing was taking the Utter Vast, and as soon as their scout found an enemy capital, they would teleport the Utter Vast onto it. And once the Utter Vast is on an enemy capital in year 0, it's not coming off. Between the damage reversal and the etherealness, it's just not possible to remove it. Plus, as I said, it's an innate spellcaster, so it will be in melee using its steel strength attack and simultaneously casting astral spells. It's pretty frightening. Plus, you could take the Utter Vast and you could say, well, I mean, scales-wise, like, I can tank that because I'm underwater, and so my underwater provinces aren't changed by the temperature scales. I need growth, yeah, I need a little bit of dominion, like 5 or so. I need production for meteorite guards. Beyond that, like, do I need magic? Well, I mean, my mages are already, like, pretty big in terms of research points. Do I need order? Not really. Might want some for the hybrid troopers. Some of the units are pretty high in recruitment points, so okay, sure, let's take a couple points of order. I'm gonna take Misfortune. Go up to Astral 7 to make me unmind duelable by S1 mages. You could even take a point of Drain if you wanted, to be honest, since your mages all have 13 or more research points. And you can give this guy, say, a point of Earth Magic. If he has a point of Earth Magic, he can cast Iron Skin to make his protection 20. Now he's protection 20 and ethereal and damage reversal. Now he's actually not going to die. The only downside to the Utter Vast, no slots. You can't gear him. The magic, whatever magic he has, that's all he gets. Personally, for me, if you're going to take a monster for Middle Age Relay, the advice actually stays the same as with Early Age Relay. You take the Father of Monsters with the Torch, or you take the Worm, because the Worm is a very solid, very reliable, relatively inexpensive expanding monster chassis. It has Fear, it has Regeneration, it has Water and Earth Magic for self-buffs, it's amphibious, it's mildly unsurroundable, so it's just nice. It's just really solid. Like, there's nothing more to say about it. It's just pretty good at doing things. You can give it hard skin and just go expand with it and not even care. Early Age Relay does not particularly need much magic from its Pretender. You've got a lot of Astral. You get up to level 2 in most of your other your cross paths, or 3 in the case of Water. That opens up a lot of available summons to you. You get a little bit of nature from slave mages. You could do worse than having nature on your god, I suppose. But generally speaking, it's just not much of a worry. Like, magically, you are the Astral Nation, or one of the Astral Nations. And so that's what you're going to mainly be relying on. In terms of gods, a god to kickstart expansion can be very nice. Alternatively, you can certainly take a Grand Hydromancer or a Firstborn of the Star or something. Probably a Grand Hydromancer just because he's a gem gen. Take him dormant and just, like, make your scales amazing. You could certainly do that. Like, this gives me 2 more points. I can do that, and then I can take... I guess I can take a point of luck. You could do this with no trouble. Or if you want him to be actually useful, you've got 3 orders, so you can tank Misfortune without hurting yourself much at all. And then you can go up to, like, that, or something like that. In terms of sacreds, you don't really have many. You've got this particular star spawn mage, but beyond that, you don't do sacreds really. Like, none of your units are sacred. You've got slave priests, you've got star spawn, and that's it. And these star spawn are not going to be the ones that you use for combat primarily, so I wouldn't even really worry about a bless. If you wanted to, you could take like a magic penetration bless or something, or improved magic resistance, or what have you, arcane finesse, farcaster. It doesn't really matter because it's not going to become relevant. If you're throwing your summoner star spawn into battle, then you're probably a little bit hard up, because these guys are really expensive for battle mages with as limited capabilities as they have. So for me, I'd just be sticking to slave mages basically. Like your wars, your communions, your mage core, even up to the end of the game is going to be like 90% slave mages with a few of these guys. And you definitely do want to be recruiting these guys pretty early and pretty consistently. But even so, I mean, by the end of the game, you'll have maybe, what, 20? 15, 20, something like that? It won't be many. So, one or two of the Star Spawn leading communions, that's what you'll end up with. Star Children. Star Children are actually really good research monkeys. And they can also serve as really good communion slaves, because they have 1 astral, and they cost 85 gold. So, yeah, in terms of pretender design, I would be strongly tempted to go something like this. He has decent sight searching, he can forge crystal items if you want crystal items and don't get the proper randoms. He gives you really great scales that you can use to... In particular, you want the resources. The high resources are very important because meteorite guards are solid and the high resources are their limitation. So the high resources to pump out more of these babies, useful. So, in terms of playing against Middle Age Relay, the question really is, what do you do about them? And to be honest, for a lot of nations it's hard because they're underwater. And so you can't, like most nations, can't really go underwater. If you're next to Middle Age Relay, if you're on the coast of their island, to be honest, I would recommend a diplomatic solution. Just, like, make peace with them, be their friend, direct them towards someone else, and then go try to win the game while they're busy. If you have to fight Middle Age Relay, include astral mages in your stacks whenever possible to ward off Mind Hunt. Be prepared for assassins, so mix in geared anti-assassin thugs, nature mages with gems scripted to cast Swarm, the kind of thing that ruins assassins' days. And you're just gonna have to be retaking your coasts over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, and it's gonna suck. Which is one of the common problems with underwater nations in general. But in any case, I hope this was at least a little bit useful. Like I said about pretenders, I wouldn't necessarily... Like, the Void Lord's kind of cool and all, but he has a life drain tentacle, but he's expensive and I wouldn't. The Uttervast is highly expensive and very effective at attacking someone else, but you do sacrifice quite a bit for his point cost. I would probably, like I said, I'd probably go Grand Hydromancer, Dormant with really good scales, or Worm, Awake with, like, middling scales. Like with the Awake Worm, you can do that. 4 water, 6 earth, hard skin, defense skill, extra cold resistance. Sure. Now he's an invincible expander, and you also still have pretty decent scales. You have a little bit fewer resources, a little bit less income, and you don't have the research boost, but you're still doing alright. The research boost from having magic can be really good for Star Children, because it pushes them up to 10 for 85 gold, which is solid. But, if you're recruiting slave mages, you won't really care all that much. So in any case, thanks for watching. Tune in next time for, I'm thinking probably we'll hit Late Age Relay, which is a different, and it's very similar in terms of units, but it's very, very different in terms of how it plays. And then we'll probably skip back to the early age and look at, I don't know yet. I don't know who we're going to look at in the early era. And at some point really soon, I do have to do Middle Age Ermor, which I don't think I've technically done a video on yet. Probably once Malpractice wraps up, we'll go back and take a look at Middle Age Ermor. So in any case, thanks for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.